Every system you depend on is a subscription you never agreed to sign. Your water, your heat, your food, all of it billed monthly, subject to outages, price hikes, and corporate decisions made 3,000 miles away. What if you could opt out permanently? Not temporarily, permanently. This video covers 10 systems you install once, some of them under $500, that continue working without inputs, without bills, and without permission for the next 50 years. Here's the economic model no one explains to you. Modern infrastructure is not designed for your security. It's designed for recurring revenue. Every utility, every appliance cycle, every food supply chain is engineered to keep you paying. Permanently? The average American household spends over $4,500 a year on energy alone. Add water, food, and healthcare, and you're looking at a six-figure drain every decade for things your great-grandparents either grew, built, or sourced from their own land. And the fragility isn't accidental. During the 2021 Texas freeze, 4 million households lost power for days in sub-freezing temperatures, not because the infrastructure was old, but because it was optimized for profit, not resilience. In 2020, supply chain disruptions emptied store shelves of basic goods within 72 hours. These weren't edge cases, these were previews. The hidden tax isn't just money, it's decision-making power. Every bill you pay is a vote of confidence in a system that doesn't care whether you survive its next failure. The alternative is infrastructure you own outright. Systems with no recurring inputs, no parts that require proprietary suppliers. No service contracts. You install it, you maintain it, and it runs for decades. That's what this video is about. Number one, the hand-dug or drilled gravity well with cistern. Municipal water is rented infrastructure. You pay for access to it, you don't own it. And in a drought, a contamination event, or a rate restructuring, your access can be restricted or priced out of reach. A drilled well with a gravity-fed cistern is the first true water-independent system. Here's what this looks like practically. A drilled well in most regions costs between $5,000 and $15,000 installed. Paired with a 2,500-gallon polyethylene cistern positioned at elevation, which feeds by gravity, not pump pressure, you have a system with no moving parts in the supply line. Cisterns of this type have documented service lives exceeding 75 years with basic maintenance. During the Dust Bowl, families who had drilled wells and gravity cisterns survived water scarcity that devastated communities dependent on municipal systems that went dry or were rationed. The mechanism is simple. Gravity is free. Stone or polyethylene doesn't corrode. The water table in most climates is self-replenishing. Your one-time maintenance obligation is annual water testing and a cistern inspection every 5 years. That's it. You're looking at 50+ years of water independence from a system your grandchildren can maintain with a flashlight and a wrench. Number two, rocket mass heater forced air furnaces last 15 to 20 years, require proprietary filters. You burn natural gas or propane on a meter someone else controls, and fail in the power outages you most need them to survive. The rocket mass heater is the structural alternative. A combustion system built from brick, cob, and steel that burns wood at such high efficiency it produces almost no smoke and releases 4 to 6 times more heat per unit of fuel than a conventional wood stove. The design was refined in the 1980s by Ianto Evans and has been used in off-grid homesteads across North America and Europe since. The principle is a J-shaped combustion chamber that creates a superheated burn, temperatures exceeding 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit, followed by a long horizontal thermal mass bench that absorbs and radiates heat for 12 to 18 hours after the fire is out. Materials cost for a basic installation run $400 to $900. Brick use cob and a salvaged steel drum. The thermal mass, typically a bench or raised bed built into the living space, stores heat like a battery and releases it gradually. No electricity, no gas line, No service contract. A properly built rocket mass heater with repointing of mortar every decade will outlast the house it heats. This is not a backup, this is infrastructure. Number 3, permaculture, food forest. Annual gardening is labor that resets to zero every spring. You buy seeds, you till, you plant, you water, you harvest, and then you do it all again next year. A food forest is the opposite model. You design and plant once, and the system builds complexity and yield over time without annual inputs. A functional food forest uses 7 layers: canopy, subcanopy, shrub, herbaceous, ground cover, root, aider and vine, to create a self-mulching, self-fertilizing, largely self-watering system. Within 10 years, a well-designed quarter-acre food forest can produce hundreds of pounds of fruit, nuts, berries, and medicinal plants annually with less than 4 hours of maintenance per month. Established orchards at American homesteads from the 1800s are still producing. Apple trees documented in Virginia from the early colonial period still bear fruit. The mechanism is ecological succession. The system wants to mature. Your job is to guide it, not fight it. Startup cost for a quarter-acre planting using bare root stock from sources like Stark Bros or One Green World runs $300 to $800. You're trading 5 years of establishment work for 50 years of yield. That's the RO. A calculation the supermarket doesn't want you running. Here's the part most people miss. The systems that cost the least to install are often the ones that last the longest, because simplicity eliminates failure points. The next 4 items on this list cost under $1,000 combined and have documented service lives that exceed most modern buildings. Number 4, ram pump for water distribution. If you have any moving water source within a quarter mile, a creek, a stream, a spring, a hydraulic ram pump will move water uphill to a storage tank with 0 electricity and 0 fuel, permanently. The mechanism uses the momentum of flowing water to compress a small valve that forces a fraction of that water to a higher elevation. No motor, no battery, no power grid. Ram pumps have been in continuous use since their invention in 1796. Now, there are documented installations in rural Appalachia and the American Southwest that have operated for over 40 years without maintenance beyond occasional valve replacement. A pre-built unit runs $400 to $1,200 depending on flow requirements. A fabricated unit from hardware store components can be built for under $60. Installation requires a minimum 4-foot elevation drop in your water source and a supply pipe from the source to the pump. That's the entire complexity. After that, it runs day and night. Seasons change. The pump doesn't notice. Number 5, Cobb or Adobe root cellar refrigeration uses electricity you rent. A root cellar uses the thermal mass of the earth, which is free and permanent. 12 to 14 feet below grade. Ground temperature in most of North America stabilizes between 50 and 60 degrees Fahrenheit year-round. That's ideal storage range for root vegetables, cured meats, fermented foods, and preserved fruits. A Cobb or Adobe root cellar built into a hillside requires no concrete, no rebar, and no contractor. The materials are clay subsoil, sand, and straw, often available on-site for free. Construction cost for a 10 by 12 cellar is typically under $500 in materials. Properly built, it will outlast any refrigerator by 60 years minimum. Documentation from Mennonite and Amish communities in Pennsylvania and Ohio shows root cellars in continuous food storage use for over 100 years, maintaining consistent temperature and humidity without any mechanical intervention. The science is thermal mass and earth insulation. The earth doesn't cycle on and off, it doesn't break, it doesn't have a compressor. Number 6, masonry rainwater cistern. A gravity well gives you groundwater. A masonry rainwater cistern gives you surface water capture, a redundant water system that operates completely independently of the aquifer. A properly lime-plastered masonry cistern has a documented service life exceeding 200 years. Roman cisterns from the 1st century are still structurally sound. Here's the practical math. A 1,500 square foot roof in a region receiving 30 inches of rainfall annually can capture over 28,000 gallons. A 5,000-gallon masonry cistern built from concrete block and sealed with hydraulic lime costs approximately $1,500 to $3,000 in materials if you do the labor yourself. That's a one-time investment for a water reserve that covers household needs for months without any rainfall input. The active compound in lime plaster, calcium hydroxide, reacts with carbon dioxide over decades to form calcium carbonate, actually hardening the structure over time rather than degrading it. You're not fighting entropy, you're working with it. Notice what all of these systems have in common. They don't fail gracefully, they just don't fail. Modern systems are engineered to degrade predictably, so you replace them on schedule. These systems are engineered to outlast the people who build them. That distinction is everything. Number 7. Humanure composting system. Flush toilets consume between 20 and 30% of household water use and require sewage infrastructure that costs municipalities billions to maintain. A humanure composting system, properly built, eliminates that dependency entirely and converts waste into finished compost in 12 to 18 months with no odor, no pathogens, and no inputs beyond carbon material. The system was formalized by Joseph Jenkins in his 1994 handbook and has been validated by independent testing through the Rodale Institute. The active mechanism is thermophilic decomposition. Internal compost temperatures reaching 130 to 160 degrees Fahrenheit, sufficient to destroy all human pathogens including E. coli and Salmonella. The physical infrastructure is 2 wooden compost bays, roughly 4 by 4 feet each, built from lumber for under $150. You fill one bay for a year while the second finishes. The output is Class A compost by functional standard. This system has 0 inputs, 0 water consumption, and an indefinite service life. You replace boards as they rot. That's the entire maintenance schedule. Number 8. Passive Solar Design Edition. Passive solar isn't a product. It's a principle baked into your architecture. A properly oriented addition. South-facing glazing in the northern hemisphere. Thermal mass floor and insulated north wall. Captures and stores solar heat without any mechanical system. No panels, no inverter, no battery bank, just glass, mass, and orientation. The Trombe wall variant, developed in 1964 by French engineer Félix Trombe, uses a dark masonry wall behind south-facing glass to absorb daytime solar gain and radiate it into living space overnight. Documented installations from the 1970s energy crisis era are still operating. Construction cost for a 200 square foot passive solar addition with a poured concrete thermal mass floor runs $3,000 to $8,000, depending on glazing quality. The physics are fixed. Sunlight is free and predictable. Thermal mass doesn't depreciate. Once you build it, you've captured free heat for the structural life of the building, which, if built well, is 100 years. Here's what the energy industry will not publish in its marketing material. The most efficient heating and cooling system ever built has no moving parts, no fuel line, and costs nothing to operate after installation. We've been building it for 3,000 years and largely forgot about it in 1950. Number 9. Perennial medicinal herb bed. The modern pharmacy model is supply chain dependency at its most acute. A single disruption, a manufacturing shutdown, a shipping delay, a price spike, and critical medications become inaccessible. A perennial medicinal herb bed is not a replacement for modern medicine. It is a resilience layer that addresses the majority of day-to-day health needs independently. Established perennial medicinals include elderberry, valerian root, echinacea, St. John's wort, and yarrow. These are not folk superstitions. They are documented pharmacological compounds. A 200 square foot perennial medicinal bed, planted with bare root and divided stock runs, under $200 to establish. Once established, it self-propagates, self-seeds, and expands. You're looking at a pharmacy that pays property taxes instead of rent. And that gets larger and more valuable every year you leave it in the ground. Art number 10, hand tool workshop with lifetime tools. Every powered tool in your shop has a motor that will fail, a battery that will degrade, and a manufacturer that may discontinue parts within 10 years. A hand tool workshop built around pre-1960 American or European manufactured tools, available for a fraction of new prices at estate sales and tool swaps, outlasts every power tool ever built. A Diston handsaw from the 1940s, properly sharpened, cuts cleaner than a modern equivalent. A Stanley No. 4 bench plane from before 1970 holds an edge longer than most modern counterparts. A set of quality chisels, properly stored, will be functional in 100 years. These are not antiques. They are superior technology that the industry stopped making because they lasted too long to generate replacement revenue. Or a complete hand tool workshop can be assembled for under $500. You own tools that can build, repair, and maintain every system on this list. No electricity required, no replacement parts on back order, 10 systems. Most of them buildable for under $1,000. Every one of them designed to still be running when your grandchildren are making decisions about what to keep and what to upgrade. The industry calls that obsolete. We call it paid off. The underlying principle connecting every system on this list is what engineers call passive persistence. The design property that allows a system to continue functioning without active inputs or maintenance cycles. It's the opposite of how modern consumer products are designed. Modern infrastructure is optimized for planned obsolescence, products and systems engineered to require replacement or service within a financially predictable window. A water heater that lasts 12 years instead of 40 isn't a failure of engineering. It's a success of business model. The same is true of HVAC systems, appliances, pharmaceutical subscriptions, and even food systems. The systems in this video succeed for 3 reasons. First, they use passive physical processes, gravity, thermal mass, decomposition, solar gain, biological succession, that don't require energy inputs because they operate with physics, not against it. Gravity doesn't have a service contract. Thermophilic decomposition doesn't require a parts supplier. Second, their materials are either geologically stable, stone, fired clay, hydraulic lime, or biologically self-renewing. Third, they are comprehensible. Any competent person with basic skills can diagnose and repair every system on this list without specialized tools, proprietary parts, or manufacturer authorization. Repairability isn't just a feature, it's the entire security model. A system you can fix yourself cannot be held hostage by a supply chain, a price hike, or a corporate bankruptcy. True cost accounting changes every calculation in this video. When you factor in replacement cycles, service contracts, energy escalation rates over 50 years, and the compounding value of independence, the numbers favor ownership by an order of magnitude. This isn't idealism, it's arithmetic. The system you currently depend on is not your friend. It's designed to be convenient enough that you keep paying and fragile enough that you're afraid to stop. The 10 systems in this video are not romantic, some take years to mature. Some require physical labor up front that most people are no longer accustomed to, but every one of them, once built, moves you from tenant to owner in the systems that matter most: water, heat, food, medicine, tools. You don't need to build all 10 this year, you need to build one. Choose the system where your current dependency feels most exposed, where a price spike, an outage, or a supply disruption would hurt you worst, and start there. The industry relies on your inertia. Your security relies on you deciding once to start. This is not about surviving catastrophe. This is about owning your own life, permanently and without asking permission.